Also, if you need closed captioning, if somebody requests that, I believe I can enable that as well. So feel free to do that if you need to. Hello and welcome to you all. I am Kim Gruey. I am one of your facilitators in the OFAR course, and I also have the honor today of hosting this webinar because our colleagues are either in Edmonton enjoying the end of the OE Global Conference, or they're in travels and on their way back. So I'm just so lucky and honored to be here today to be able to host this webinar. So I'm going to quickly go through the slides as soon as I because we have a few introductory housekeeping things, and then I want to definitely make most of the time for Hasna and Luis. So here's today's agenda. We're going to go through a few introductions, remind you about the fall webinars, remind you about the webinar absence policy, because if you're watching this after the fact, then you know that you'll need to know what you need to do to show that you were here. And then we're going to get into the meat of the presentation and try to leave some time at the end for Q&A. So again, this is the OFAR team that you see on the slide. You know, Una and James, they are our, I call them the suits lovingly. They're the leaders, the admins, and Liz does all the behind the scenes stuff. And then there's Joy and me and Mari Tez, who are your facilitators. And Mari Tez also happens to be a super coach. And I believe she is even here today. So big shout out and welcome to you, Mari Tez. And these are the webinars for the fall, and you see the ones that are required are in bold print, and you see those dates. And then the optional ones, I hope that you're able to make time to come because they're often very helpful, especially that open office hour where you get your personal questions answered. There's that bit.ly link if you, and I will put that in the chat for you. If you have not yet got that information, then you can grab that information. I'll put that in the chat once we get started on the presentation. And here's the absence policy. If you happen to miss, we definitely want to encourage you to be here as much as possible, but we know life happens. Just kind of let us know in advance if you're able to. Let your coach know and your team leader know, and then try to view the recording as soon as possible so you can kind of be in it with us all sort of at the same time. And then there's a discussion makeup area in the course. You can go in there and reply to the prompt, and that can verify your attendance. So we really appreciate you doing that because that's all sort of tied into what the promises are of what you're going to do and how you're going to get that stipend too. And so without further ado, I want to introduce our fantastic speakers. Hasna Sadat Hadi has been in the OFAR program for a long time as well as a participant and now as a coach. And she's also with her colleague here, Luis Guerrero, are like international presenters on this topic. And I think I would just like to turn it over to them now. So thank you for being here, and I'm going to stop my sharing and turn that over to Luis.
Thank you so much. Let me just share my screen. All right, welcome everybody. Thank you, Kim, for that introduction. My name is Luis Guerrero. I'm a math faculty by training, but also serve as the PD coordinator for Palomar College. What's that?
Hello, everyone. My name is Husna Sadat Hadi, and my pronouns are she, her, aya. I was part of the inaugural OFAR program as a participant and been an OFAR coach for the past 3 years. Elated to be here, but I'm also a faculty counselor at Palomar College. So welcome, everyone, and thank you for having us.
All right, we want to start the day with our land acknowledgement, and now I'm gonna read our local land acknowledgement, and then we're gonna hopefully have a little space so that you can share a little bit about the native lands that your college or wherever you are in the world joining us from possibly can be from. So the Palomar College developed the following land acknowledgement. The resilient and continued presence of the Pocom Yowichim, Lisueño, the Kumeyay, Ipay, Diegueño, and the Kupanguayichem, Cupeño, and the Ibiavietum, Cahuila nations compel Palomar College to take substantive, respectful action to engage the lands and its first people with justice and compassion as fellow human beings. Palomar College acknowledges it benefits from the land and its first people, the unceded ancestral lands of these sovereign nations, and commits to promoting indigenous knowledge systems and practices in its educational mission. Palomar College pledges to foster a successful learning environment that supports indigenous students and engages in the needs and concerns of the nations who continue to occupy this land. So I want to do a small activity. I'm going to put in the chat a link, and while I share that chat in the link in the chat, let me just click the right button so I can open the chat. Can people start sharing if you know from which native lands does your college occupy? I'm sharing a link to this website, which is a very interactive. So you can actually, this was a research tool developed from, I think, from a Canadian research institution, where you can zoom into any state and to any zip code that you want, and you can actually see the overlay geographical information. So this can actually be implemented in your classes for like a GIS course, or even in kind of like in any STEM course, so that students can go and search kind of like the interplay of the different regions. And so it's a very interactive, and it has information from other countries also, like Australia and other ones. So it's a very interesting, and it's kind of like very global. So it's highly recommended. So while we continue with our presentation today, if you know the lands upon which your college, and if your college has developed a land acknowledgement, we highly recommend that you post it right now so that other people can enjoy. So one of the things that we recommend as practices for decolonizing the curriculum and pedagogy at your college is hopefully you develop a land acknowledgement, and in most open spaces that you can, please make an open space for the current people that still like your students, and also the benefits that we enjoy by being in this land from the first people that had here. All right. So hopefully people are reading the different places that you're sharing with us. So we're going to move on.
Yeah, so before we begin, I think it's important to understand the definition of decolonization when it comes to education. Decolonization involves identifying colonial systems and structures that are in place in education and attempting to eradicate them. This will require OFAR faculty to critically reflect what is unconscious to many. In other words, what is below the iceberg that perpetuates coloniality at your colleges and in your classrooms. Decolonization is about dismantling colonial ideologies, racial hierarchy, and hegemony. This work requires listening to folks at your colleges and classrooms who experience racial marginality, and creating a call to action for your campus and classrooms to be anti-racist. Decolonization is about elevating voices that have been historically silenced and marginalized. I state the word historical, as this should not be a practice now or moving forward into the future. When creating plans for your college and designing your course curriculum, be sure to center students' lived experiences through cultural relevant and responsive teaching, the other CRT. Decolonization is about rethinking, reframing, and restructuring education to include liberation and racial equity. Are we teaching to assign grades, or are we teaching to ensure our students are self-empowered to learn the curriculum, feel validated, belonging, and free from all systems of oppression? Decolonization is about building community, self-reflecting on a continuum. How are you building community with students in your classroom and employees at your college? Are you deeply reflecting on the assignments and presentations you are presenting in your course? Decolonization is about empowering people by acknowledging the lived experiences of communities of color holistically in all aspects of developing curriculum, pedagogy, policy, and praxis. And you can go to the next slide. We have all seen the image of three people who are watching the baseball game. The reality is inequities are in place for our students. Although equality allows students to be given the same delivery of teaching, it is equity that ensures everyone is watching the game at the same height and comprehending your curriculum. And liberation is about decolonizing your curriculum by breaking down the fence, and inclusion is when all three people are actually playing the game and not watching it on the sidelines. As a decolonizer and anti-racist educator, you should see beyond this image. Remember, what is below the iceberg? Those who are watching the game also happen to be racially minoritized in this image. as even with this image, white hegemony is being illustrated. Also, even in the history of Major League Baseball, racial marginality and segregation was practiced. We have to be critically conscious and intentional in creating anti-racist curriculum and pedagogy. The University of Southern California developed a report regarding the syllabus being used as a tool of addressing racial equity by 3 objectives. Number 1, the syllabus is a tool that can define equity in your course. Understanding how the syllabus can act as a tool of equity, a syllabus is a tool to introduce the ethos of your class. It's an official agreement of partnership between the learner and teacher. And equity language and statements should be further welcomed students coming from all walks of life, especially students of color who have experienced marginality and been targeted to racism. Number 2, the importance of students' phenomenology in your course is including the experiences of students of color. By promoting sense of belonging for them, being intentional with including equity in your course, and being inclusive to race, pronouns, sexuality, religion, disability, socioeconomic status, learning comprehension, and more. Also, it's important to deconstruct the centering and representation of white students being the norm. Number 3, student-centered syllabus means student success and achievement. Reimagining the syllabus to serve students as they are the focal point of who we are serving on our campus. So it's imperative to center culturally relevant, sustaining, and revitalizing pedagogy in your classroom.
So in continuing in this slide, one of the things that we want to acknowledge, this is a different version of trying to make the distinction between equity and equality. Equality is every single person receives the same tools and services. And we can see that there's many of our student populations that are being disserviced. On the right-hand side, there's a little small kid trying to access a bike that can barely reach one of the pedals. In the second to the right is a person that has perfectly fits its needs. The second person from the left can barely fit in the standardized bicycle. And in the first picture on the left, there's a person in a wheelchair that cannot even access the normal standard bicycle. But by constructing different models that fit the different students that we serve, we can see now in the second pictures at the bottom that an ADA compliant where a bicycle can be cranked by hand can be the tool that allows a person that has in a wheelchair be able to ride a bike in conjunction with the other students. So this graphic was created by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and that's a great job of illustrating what it looks like when equality is deemed the solution. When we all want to move forward, but we cannot if we are all given the same bike. Each individual needs a solution that will meet their need and propel them forward. Hopefully everybody can see why and how one size fits all doesn't work for all.
The foundation and history of teaching curriculum and pedagogy were framed with a colonized approach and logic. What this means is that academia has basically become very hegemonic, specifically white hegemony, power, and hierarchy, disregarding the perspective and lived experiences of communities of color. The perpetuation of white supremacy is practiced when white racial identity is centered as a norm in education. Intersectional identities such as race, economic standing, pronouns, sexuality, disability, immigration status, English language learner, first-generation scholarship increases the need for teachers to become decolonized, equity-focused, student-centered, and anti-racist. We need to dismantle systems and structural racism to see students of color thrive academically and prevent marginalization from continuing in the classroom. To gain a holistic perspective, we looked at scholarly research and we provide different methods of teaching to construct a decolonized and equity-minded core syllabus and teaching. Reflection about this work is continuous and not an overnight process. As you can see in this image, it has been over 60 years since civil rights, and we are still protesting and standing against racism. And I just wanted to just share that this work that Luis and I are doing, every time we have a presentation, we're constantly going back to our syllabus every semester and sharing ideas amongst other faculty colleagues at our institution to share great practice, but also to be challenged on things that we are not aware of, like our own implicit bias when we're writing our course syllabus. So I strongly recommend that just continue to do this work with your syllabus every semester and not just say, okay, it's decolonized, I'm ready to go, I'm done, my job is done for this semester and for my academic years to come, right? So yeah, okay, now you can go into the next slide. Yeah, you can go on the next slide now. Okay, perfect. The purpose of the course syllabus is to create a partnership, like I said, between the students and faculty member. It's important to have an introduction in your course syllabus that welcomes students to the course and allows them to get to know you more of who you are as a faculty member. On my course syllabus, Luis, you can actually click on it. You could see that I've elucidated who I am and my positionality. First generation college student. I was a former immigrant, and I have intersectional identity, being a woman of color. I talk about being an English language learner, being system impacted. And so when it comes to introducing who you are, I think it's very important because oftentimes we want to know who our students are, but I think that to build trust, they need to really understand who you are and who you coming into this space teaching the curriculum that they're hoping to learn. And then not only that, but it kind of allows you to also connect with your student population as well. I teach justice impacted students. So when I tell them that I'm system impacted, they understand. They're like, wow, okay, so you understand our lived experiences. And so I think it's really important as we are navigating, creating a syllabus, putting those welcoming messages, talking about who you are is a way of connecting and bridging a culture of understanding between you and the learners in your classroom. I also mentioned different types of methods of being able to be contacted through Canvas, email, Google Voice, etc. So on the top, if you scroll up, Luis, on the top of my syllabus, and you all will have access to these slides and our syllabus and all the resources that we're going to be sharing with you. So no need to take notes unless you want to. As you know, my name is Arabic, it's Egyptian. And so a lot of students can't pronounce it. So I actually put it down phonetically how it would be pronounced so that my name doesn't get mispronounced. And I want to make sure I honor my ancestors who named me. And so, when it comes to my pronouns, I think that's really important. I started doing a pronoun project on my campus, and you'll see a ASCCC rostrum that me and my colleagues wrote regarding pronoun project at your institutions. Since I launched the pronoun project and my Canvas, I noticed that a lot of my students are non-binary, and that could be easily they could be easily targeted to marginalization if you assume that they identify with the binary gender. So having a pronoun is very important. And then I hyperlink everything, so when you click on it, it goes to our college's pronoun. To be able to share different modalities, my class is asynchronous. However, I do have a synchronous Wednesday class, but with office hours, different modalities, I have adapted that a lot of my students are working full-time. So there are times where I, call my students up using Teams in the evenings to answer any questions that they have, or meet with them on Zoom for office hours if need be. I actually go according to what's beneficial for the students and what works for their accommodation as well. I also, if you scroll down to my syllabus, Luis, the course description is given, right? Accessing Canvas, we can't assume all students can access Canvas, but also if they're having trouble accessing their Canvas, where to go. Email access as well. A lot of students don't check their email. Obviously, we have to put learning outcomes per our course outline of record. So if you scroll down, Luis, sorry. And then textbook, I want to just share that, for this class specifically, I actually gift students a textbook because we get the Rising Scholars grant from the State Chancellor's Office. But for my other classes, I am a zero textbook cost instructor, and that has definitely made a huge difference for my students, particularly students who are poor or low socioeconomic status, who can't afford the expensive textbooks. So I had to really reflect on who my student population is, and noticing that the vast majority of my students students are financial aid recipients and are not part of EOPS where they get free books or grants, I had to swiftly accommodate for my students. And I noticed that when I became a zero textbook cost instructor, my class got filled before most of my colleagues in my department because some of my colleagues were charging $50 to $60 for a textbook that students could not afford. So just be mindful of the student population that you're serving at your institutions, because a lot of students cannot afford certain books. Grading for equity has definitely helped me kind of look at the modalities of how to allocate points for my students. My assignments range between 2.5 to 5 points for participation and completion of assignments. I do have a plethora of assignments that I give and opportunities for them to go from like failing a week of module 1 to still be able to complete the course with the grade that they feel more satisfied with, and they're completing at a higher standard. So I think that having the modality of grading with equity, and I think Luis was spearheading that book club with the Feldman book that is out there, that really helped me to understand my rubric, but also my grading policy. So going down, attendance, obviously attendance is important for students to attend class, but I'm also flexible with attendance because I understand that a lot of my students have personal deterrents or barriers that they're confronted with. So having an open mind of, okay, if the student doesn't respond, there must be an emergency. Just like our colleagues, if they don't respond, there's something that has happened, and we have to just show grace to a lot of our students who might have those personal barriers at home that they are trying to juggle with, and but also to be mindful of checking in with them. Don't expect them to check in with you. It's important that we set aside like early alerts to be able to connect with our students to say, hey, I noticed that you didn't do any assignments this week. Just wanted to check in. Is everything okay? And oftentimes when that's done, it could be a simple thing of, I'm having imposter syndrome and I don't think I'm good enough for your class and I missed one assignment. Should I just drop it? And just having that real authentic, intentional conversations with your students is very vital. I've noticed that my retention rate is 100%. My completion rate is 100% because I do those early alerts through Canvas. So, these are things to be mindful of in terms of practice. These are anti-racist practice because you're not operating in a very colonial mindset of, oh, students are not meeting the needs of this course. Fine, I'll go ahead and fail them or I'll dock points off. Using a decolonization lens is really about how to support the students and centralizing the students at the forefront of your course. Obviously, affirmation stickers are always great to have on your syllabus. I was also part of the Black Minds Matter first cohort at San Diego State with Dr. Luke Wood, who was my dissertation chair. So that was very helpful because when I put these stickers up, actually, I created those stickers for Dr. Wood. And when I put those stickers up on my office, on my hydro flask, immediately my students who identify as African-American Black were like, oh, cool. So I now know your salient positionality of where you stand with someone who looks like me. And I think that that is very critical, just like Safe Zone. So our Pride students feel very welcomed and they know that they're going to get that validation from me, from my office when I'm meeting with them in a counseling session or in my classroom, the ecological space that I create in my classroom to create that and foster that sense of belonging and validation for our students. How I'm actually promoting disability justice in my classroom is critical, especially because a lot of my students might have visible disability, but many have invisible disability. How am I providing validation for those students as well? And so that's really critical. The representation does matter, as they say. So it's important that as you're creating slides, as you're creating curriculum, your assignments for your course, be intentional of what resources are you using and who's representing those images on those slides. And later on, Luis will share some resources with you. So go ahead and scroll down, Luis. I always have the census dates on there because I can't expect students to go on the system to understand when the census dates are. But I have this message saying, if you're considering to drop this course beforehand, please speak to me. I always tell my students, just come and speak to me. If you're thinking of dropping it, just come and speak to me, because oftentimes I can alleviate those barriers and that will prevent you from not having to drop this course and not having to face those consequences. So it's really important that we're actually reaching out to the students before they even want to consider dropping your course. I have a lot of resources on my syllabus. I usually tell faculty at my institution, just copy and paste whatever you find on my syllabus that you want to use, because the information sustains the same, like food and housing resources on our campus or off campus, academic accommodations with our Disability Resource Center, our behavioral health counseling services if they want therapy. And so I pretty much put everything on there, because what I don't want is for my students to go around the campus and have a scavenger hunt. It's not fair to the students to kind of guess what services we offer. We should be merging student services and instructional services together. And that is really taking an anti-racist approach, but also a decolonization approach of meeting the students where they're at. And you could scroll down, Luis. Yeah, and then so this is the most critical piece, and Luis will touch more upon it, but student conduct and academic integrity. Many faculty that we've worked with all across the country, they have a hard time swaying away from punitive language. They oftentimes are like, no, I want to make sure that they know that there's a code of conduct on our campus, and this is a legal document. Syllabus was not designed to be a legal document to protect anybody. Let me just make that very clear. It is an agreement between the faculty member and the student to understand what to adhere to while they're taking your course. If you're coming into that space creating a legal document to say, I am going to report you, imagine what that DACA student feels on the other side reading this. They might think, I'm going to go and be deported out of this country, or I'm going to lose my status to live here. So it's really important that I actually just make reference to student conduct on our campus, but I also tell students that if I find that you are plagiarizing or using AI or anything in that nature, I want to meet with you. I want to understand why you did that. And I want to be able to help you and empower you. I don't want to empower the student, but I want the student to feel self-empowered to be able to do the work and not rely on resources that's not theirs. And if they aren't, learn how to reference those resources. And there's going to be times where faculty want to use AI, but if other faculty that don't want to use the AI, you need to make sure that you just have that real conversation, a transparent conversation with the student, rather than just going and reporting them. That reporting, is detrimental. It's criminality. It's hegemony. It's racism, oftentimes that happens. And so really we need to look at a different approach, and examples of my syllabus and Luis's syllabus will provide some context on how you go about and having that information elucidated on your syllabus where it's not scary for the students, but it's actually helpful. I also connect to different careers. I think it's important with all these statewide initiatives like Guided Pathways and Vision for Success. So it's important that I'm embedding those practices within my syllabus as well. I talk about respect. Respect is very key, especially with my student population when, they've been segregated in prison. So when they come to our institution, I'm like, segregation is not going to happen in my classroom. Like, we're all integrating together, and to be able to see that process is so beautiful. But also to kind of dismantle the othering of them and us, right? And so how do we go about and explaining to them what microaggressions are? So I actually refer to Sue 2007 and colleagues' article about racial microaggressions, and then we do exercises in the classroom about what those look like. Oftentimes, I would say about 75% of my students have either experienced racial microaggressions or they have actually committed them onto others. So they're like, yeah, I've actually did that to somebody else, or they experienced gender microaggressions. And so these are conversations that we really need to have. And it also sets the framework of your classroom along with the community agreements. I know OFAR has a section about community agreements. Community agreements it's critical to understand, but also to realize that it's a space where you're coming and using a framework to ensure that everybody's trusting each other, they're respecting each other, and they're guiding with authenticity of being able to elevate their own experiences, but the experiences of others in the classroom. I always put quotes on my syllabus. Oftentimes I quote Tupac. I know Luis quotes Snoop Dogg. We both have like this West Coast love for rap. And I just wanted to share the Learning Pact. The Learning Pact was actually adopted from the @ONE Equity Syllabus training by Dr. Jamie Thomas and James as well, who leads OFAR. And so a lot of this was what I learned in the @ONE training of what the students can expect from me as their instructor. So I'm putting it myself into this pack too, because this is, I never say this is my class. I always say this is our class. It's very important that I use that language because I want the students to have the accountability piece too, but also for me to be accountable on my end as well. So I indicate what students can expect of me. And on the bottom, students can share what is expected of them. And so that way we're going into this semester where we both have an agreement of moving forward and being able to work collegially in the classroom. There is another section in my other classes where I put in information about this is my peer or my buddy in the classroom, and then they have like their email or their Google number or something that they can reach out to them in case they miss my class. You can do that as well. That's another thing I learned at the @ONE class. But just remember, the syllabus is supposed to be exciting. It's supposed to be fun. You want to make sure that students are not scared to take your class. That's the first thing they're going to read. And if they see, oh, this is like a 10-page document, it's kind of bland, it's kind of boring, and it sounds scary. Just imagine the positionality of students and what they're going through. And make sure you hyperlink everything if it's related to resources on campus. How can we actually provide greater social and cultural capital for our students using the syllabus? So if there's like internship opportunities or work study opportunities on campus, those are things you want to also hyperlink in there as well. And then just know that, with everything that you're learning in OFAR, and adopting into your syllabus and what you're learning today from us, that this is a continuous process. Like every semester, you might take some professional development training and add more to your syllabus, and that's okay. It's a live document. And Luis will share how he goes about with his syllabus to create it a live document on Canvas.
All right, thank you. So before I jump into sharing kind of like the resources and my solution to implementing the syllabus so that I don't need to upload different PDFs or Word documents, version 1, version 2, it's a very interesting solution that I found that hopefully other people can adopt or find a hybrid version between static PDF document versus a live document that I'll share out. So we are aware of liquid syllabus, and I'll share my interpretation of what liquid syllabus is in a few moments. But before we continue, let's make sure that we are we address Hosna touched upon the two biggest items that we feel that our students are impacted, where faculty are not fully embodying the decolonizing viewpoint, which is punitive language in two settings, which is in the turning in late work or being late to class or absenteeism, kind of like that, like lateness of work in class aspect. And then the other aspect is academic integrity. Those are the two most pieces of a syllabus where we have resistance from some faculty because they tell us, oh, a dean told me to put it, and then they just stick with that language for years. So we need to be wary of our students' trauma and past experiences. Some of you have even taken possibly professional development opportunities about trauma-informed pedagogy. So make sure that we are conscious, all of us, even our students, just came out of the pandemic, and there's a lot of mental health issues related to that. So let's not re-traumatize or trigger students by imbuing punitive language when it shouldn't be. So the words in the word cloud in this little gavel are not just punitive and deficit thinking, but can be triggers for some students of the underserved and most affected students of neglect, like our undocumented students, our dreamers, our formerly incarcerated, veterans, refugees, LGBTQ+, adult learners, current and former foster youth, American Indian, Native American students, et cetera, the amount of students that we serve that can be triggered by this punitive language can be wide and deep. So you might see students with different difficulties in classes, like difficulty in focusing, attending, and retaining, tendencies to miss a lot of classes, anxiety about deadlines, exam, group work, or public speaking. They withdraw and they self-isolate, all because of the language that you choose to put into not just your syllabus, but in all of your assignments in Canvas course language. We need to question the wordings in the syllabus and the class content as a whole. To decolonize, we need to bring in our students' experiences and consider how the language we use either overtly or subconsciously is affecting them in our classrooms. Our classroom should be brave spaces, going beyond safe spaces, and practice cultural humility, humanizing and not propagating colonial views and policies. And so again, moving away from somebody told me, my chair, my dean, somebody gave me a syllabus from 10, 20 years ago and said they just carbon copy it because it's the standard syllabus that's supposed to be used in my department or in my classes. The other thing is we have to be very careful with kind of like how can you still, one of the things that happens, especially in STEM classes, and I teach math, I'm very aware of this, is faculty constant complaint. I can't do something because of rigor or because it's a state policy. One thing is you can still have a policy, but the other thing is how do you convey that messaging? For example, one of the things that I tell my students in my math classes is that the eraser is your best friend in a math class because I'm expecting them to make mistakes and I respect the mistakes that they make because you learn through those mistakes. And I commit a lot of mistakes, be it like typos that I write a plus instead of minus, a 3 instead of a 2, and students correct me as their instructor. And so it's a learning opportunity that I share. You don't have to be perfect, but just make sure that you are hardworking, put in the effort, perseverance. And when there is a mistake, learn from the mistake so that we can go to the higher level critical thinking, problem solving, quantitative reasoning, pattern recognition skills that are the real intended goal for a math class. So we need to make sure that we have a welcoming messaging instead of an unwelcoming or punitive language. So you can still have certain policies, but you can restate them. It is typical that when you have an unwelcoming policy with regard to late absences or missing classes, some deans or other people might tell you, you can drop a student if they miss 3 or 4 classes during the semester, like get rid of them, you need to grade less, and it's gonna give you more free time. That's very not student-centric. So instead of saying, I will drop you when this happens, you can rephrase this and say, you should attend every class, but extenuating circumstances arise that can make it difficult for you to attend. If you cannot attend a class, please let me know. If you miss more than 3 classes during the semester, you may be overextended, but come and talk to me. Let's see options. Let's see if you can make up the work, or there's many different things. So this is an example of how you can be, the policies that you want to attend to are still present, but making sure that it's in a welcoming manner, not deficit thinking, punitive manner. And so make sure that you avoid deficit thinking and punitive language. Make sure that you include validating, welcoming, engaging, and make a sense of belonging in all of the language that you write. And so there, we're going to talk a little bit more about kind of academic dishonesty and plagiarism in a few moments. But the key point is, what do you value most? Compliance or compassion? And I think that in the world that we're in, we need to move more toward compassion than strict compliance, because we can change slightly how students meet standards and still be maintaining rigor, but not make it be too compliant that nobody meets the standard type of thing. So in light of that, let me share how I do my syllabus. As you can see, I always tell my students that if I were to share with them, and I think Hosna has explained in other instances that she has done this in the past, like the left-hand side was the syllabus that I started using when I first started teaching. As you can see, it is not that inviting. So before I started the journey alongside Hosna about decolonizing the syllabus, before, my syllabus was geared toward the concise. Somebody told me it has to be a 1-page, no more than 1-page type of syllabus. It was short and concise. It was bare bone information. It was short and sweet. It was not inviting. It was dry. It was bleak. It was monochrome, geared toward professional. It was faculty centered, aka protecting me and avoiding me to get in trouble with my deans, or avoiding me having to do more work, instead of being student centered. I did use punitive and unwelcoming language. I was thinking that I needed to do certain things only because of the word rigor or many other things. So I stopped thinking about the syllabus as being a contract. The syllabus should be a living document which reflects the experiences, emotions, philosophies, and goals that you bring to a particular course. It is your declaration of values that underpin both the plan and the promise, the why that undergirds the what. It provides information about the classes, class expectation, and the support services provided to all students, especially the ones that you will provide to achieve every student's success. This also sets the tone for your class, so it makes the best first impression possible. So make sure that you learn to humanize your course, not just humanize your course, but humanize your syllabus. Make sure that you try to use metacognition. Make sure you try to use affirmations like I am your biggest supporter and invested in your success. Make it kind of like a promise to them that you will support them to achieve the goal. Help me to help you type of thing. And be aware of the time commitment that the students need in order to do well in your classes, especially STEM courses that are content driven. I teach math, I understand the burden of having to deal with the content. And make sure that you are working with them. The other thing is, let's suppose that there is a situation where there's either academic integrity or other policies. Have you considered restorative justice? Meaning, what's more important, putting a big fat zero and failing a student on an assignment just because they didn't follow certain standards? Or do you want to make them do the work and kind of like restore the work? And so restorative justice can be a practice to have students make up the work so that they learn it. And if there was a violation that you consider just, then they can make up the work. So again, trying to stay away from zeros and just plain vanilla straight failing. Invite them back. You need to call them in instead of calling them out, instead of marginalizing them. Academic standards can be different from different cultures. So that's the other thing that we need to be aware of, that sharing is caring in some cultures, and therefore they might not recognize that certain things are plagiarisms, and or like, why do I need to format certain things in a certain way that is a little bit more Western-centric way of schooling. And the other thing is, don't let the experience of one or two bad students, quote unquote, that you experienced 10 years ago affect the 99.999% of the students moving on forward. This also has to be a personal journey for you. You have to make the changes that you feel comfortable with. One of the things that students are great in, they can immediately smell fakeness. So if you put in any policy in your syllabus in your campus that you yourself don't believe or commit to doing, then it's going to be just word of mouth, and it's just gonna, they're gonna actually turn off to you because they say, hey, you told me you were going to do this. I ask a question, then you shut me down. You know what? I'm gonna now shut down for the rest of class and not interact. And so make sure that you are comfortable making the changes. It's okay to gradually make a couple of changes each semester so that you progress. Hosna and I are constantly learning at One Trainings, OFAR, the frameworks from the state Senate, Academic State Senate office, and so on and so forth. So rather to fake it, make sure you own it type of thing. All right, now I'm going to share something that is going to be a Google Doc. I know that some people complain, oh, you can't make Google Docs accessible. That is not the case. The other thing is, if you know what a liquid syllabus is, a liquid syllabus is a way of having students view content, be it from Canvas or documents, especially like the syllabus, on their cell phones. And so one of the things that I've done is do Google Docs, because yes, you can make a Google Doc be mobile friendly. And to me, this is the solution of making the syllabus liquid, instead of learning how to code with HTML or something like that, like a website, which is typically liquid syllabus are presented in a website format. All right, so let me share my version of the syllabus so that people can see. And again, we will share all of these documents with you. So one of the things that I did was make it lively. This is a Google document, but I can make everything accessible. That's not the issue. Let me just make this a little bit bigger. It's taking a moment to load. But I inject color. One of the things that kind of like constantly people kind of like adhere to is kind of like make things bland. I make things in color, and I'm just waiting for some graphic to load, which is an interactive one. The other thing that we were involved with is our college went through a project called the Student Edification Project, which is trying to make kind of like affirmations so that students can succeed a little bit more in math, especially because math is one of the biggest barriers for student completions in getting their degrees. And so I'm going to share you a couple of those graphics that were developed, and I know the Hosna helped a little bit with the first kind of like draft, some of the messaging that was in that regard. The other thing I know the Hosna was doing for name pronunciation, doing the phonetic spelling of it. The other thing that your college can partner with is Name Coach. So if you know what Name Coach is you press a link and takes them to a website where they click and can hear the audio. You can embed Name Coach into Canvas or other systems in your college. It is expensive, but I feel that that's another way of validating the culture so that you can hear the proper pronunciation of your students instead of asking them 3 or 4 times. And if it's an East Asian name or an African name or another name that you might not be that familiar with, then you can remove the awkwardness of asking a student too many times, and you can hear it multiple times from your students, and then you can try to approximate the best you can. Obviously, we're not gonna say perfectly because we're not native to that language, but you can address it. So again, similar to all of the other practices, that may be very colorful, very inviting. Yeah, this is kind of like the portion that I kind of like constantly mention that mistakes are expected and unexpected. I'm going to glance over most of it because Hosna has already covered most of it. I also cover a OER book. I do want to acknowledge that many STEM faculty choose not to go to an OER book because of the burden of the resources are not fully there for some. I'm not saying all, some resource, but they're getting a little bit better. I know that it takes a lot of time to remix or enhance the OER books that are there, but I think that connecting with OFAR and other resources, if your college has grants, because the state has a lot of grants for adapting and including OER books, so make sure you connect with your campus's efforts in that regard. Again, more affirmations. I kind of like tell them about the investment of time, but I'm their biggest supporter. Then we also have to do more things. I do cover little things, and I know that we're close on time, so we can have a deal with questions. I do want to cover my little aspects about academic integrity. One of the things that our Office of Student Leadership, well, it used to be called Office of Student Conduct, now it's called Office of Student Life and Leadership. So even just the name change is more student-centric. Has made 5 tenets that we adhere all students towards. So instead of saying, oh, you're going to be penalized, we basically want to elevate them so that they can host honesty, truth, fairness, respect, and responsibility. And then I do actually embed fully and completely AI into my classes, but I go through the ethical use of AI in our courses so they can understand kind of like what's the purpose and how to use it. Because to me, it is a tool that it might hinder them in the future if they don't include it and don't know how to use it. But it is also a tool that we need to recognize that it is embedded with a lot of racism. The algorithms that were used to train the data are very not geared toward white people. There's many books written on the algorithms of oppression and the weapons of math destruction that can talk a little bit more how AI is not the best. Yet I am of the view that we need to prepare our students to have the tools and not have, again, the privilege that only the white students have certain tools and then not all students have the same tools so they can continue going into the workforce. So as you can see, it's just very inviting. I do have a little bit 10 pages, but I do want to say that adapting the grading for equity took a long time. And so I had totally reworked my grading skills so that it's like a GPA version instead of having the 0 to 100 point scale. You can have access to this at a later time, so I'm not going to continue with the rest of this, and we'll continue with our presentation. So one of the things that we want to acknowledge, the next thing is in our college, we actually developed guided pathways grant that we actually went through. And in the summer of 2021, Hosna and I facilitated a program for faculty. We had 40 participants in our college to go through the process of decolonizing the syllabus. So we wrote an article in the Rostrum, I know that Kim mentioned that. Then we actually took the effort of how can we make our college embed all of the knowledge that we're going through. And so in that, we did showcase 40 different faculty from different disciplines. And then we had a collection of a repository where we have different faculty from chemistry, American Indian Studies, child development, English. We even had welding and performing arts go through this process. So we're going to put the link in the chat in a few moments. But I want to recognize there needs to be leaders in your college that takes this endeavors and initiatives to the rest of your colleagues on campus.
Okay, thank you, Luis. I'm going to be talking some equity themes to include in your course syllabus. So if I'm going fast, don't worry, because you're going to have access to all the slides. Introduction, personalization. Do students know who you are? Consider introducing yourself, race, ethnicity, pronouns, academic experience, cultural identity, and more. As the instructor of the course, and providing anti-racist and equity-minded messaging to welcome your students. Number 2, availability. Are there multiple methods students can contact you? And is there flexibility on communication times? You may also want to discuss with your department on multiple days and times course offerings should be available for students who work and have greater responsibilities. Number 3, equitizing teaching. What books, articles, and readings have been intentionally selected in your course? Are your course resources inclusive to race, socioeconomic standing, pronouns, sexuality, disability, immigration status, English language learner, first-generation students, and more? Number 4, explicit language. Is there explicit language about the intolerance of micro and macroaggressions and racist remarks, action, and behavior in the course elicited? Also, it's important not to state the word minority students, as communities of color represent the majority, but are minoritized in colonial racist systems of practice. Deficit language should be challenged, and it's critical for faculty to engage in this meaningful work. Number 5, early alert. Is there messaging regarding you as a faculty member to alert learners if participation, learning, and attendance are not met? The impact of early alert has been proven to support students towards retention and course and degree completion. Number 6, supportive teaching. Are mistakes expected, respected, and used to elevate students' understanding of your subject? Do you offer opportunities to retaking missed or late work? What opportunities are there for students to catch up if they are behind due to technological barriers or other personal deterrents? Number 7, language about policy. Is language about policy and expectations of students supported and not punitive or deficit thinking? Number 8, resources. Does your course syllabus provide information regarding housing and food insecurities, internships, career opportunities, along with other on and off-campus resources that benefits socioeconomically disadvantaged students? Number 9, Canvas course. Is your Canvas course accessible, clear, inclusive, welcoming, and supportive for all learners to follow despite the modality of asynchronous or synchronous teaching? Number 10, positive messaging and affirmations. Are there positive messages and affirmations displayed in your course syllabus and Canvas to further validate and provide a greater sense of belonging for students of color in the course? Do the images and videos in the course showcase diversity and representation of students we serve on campus? And number 11, pronouns. Pronoun guides are important for your college to create and use. If your college does not have one, please bring it to the attention of your leaders. This is our college's pronoun, and we've actually hyperlinked it. You'll have access to it later. So you can use it as a guide to begin introducing it in meetings, introductions, signatures, and if you have Zoom classroom teaching.
So the other practices that we want to just hone in a little bit is somebody asked a question of what is grading for equity. There are many different, depends on which discipline you teach. Some disciplines prefer contract grading or labor-based grading. Other disciplines, the grading for equity or the ungrading mechanisms can be best suited. So this is kind of like a not one size fits all type of situation. So one of the things that we want to acknowledge here is how the 0 to 100 point scale has more than 50% of that scale is geared toward failure. From 0 to 69 is failure in a 100-point scale. So that speaks a lot about the values that we have, that only 30% of our 0 to 100% scale is passing. And so I'll let you glance a little bit about the information here. So what we are proponent is, can you change your grade modality? And again, I teach STEM. It doesn't matter if I'm teaching differential equations, calculus, or the math for liberal arts, which is like intro, lowest level math class. I've modified all of my classes. I haven't changed content. I haven't dropped reader, but it allows students to make up more points, because if you had put a 0 on a 0 to 100% scales, that's doom and gloom. Your students that might never make up that. But if you make a 0 on a 0 to 4 scale, then the impact is lessened. And the other thing is, if you have late policies that are very open, that they can make up those points when you do write in a 0, then in a 0 to 4 scales, then they can make it up quicker and faster. So here are some options for you to be able to expand your view of what grading can be. And we don't have time for that activity, so I apologize. And this is kind of like the aspect that Hosna was sharing about illustrations. There are many websites, like there's a website called Black Illustrations, and this is the 2 icons that are here on the right, where this illustrator actually spent time in creating positive stereotypes of professional looking in different settings, family, office, educations of people of color, because too many times we have the caricature, we have kind of like the many images in popular culture that don't put people of color in the positive light. So this was a great resource. Sometimes you do have to buy them, but I suspect with the AI generated options that are now coming up in the pipeline, that we can ask, so that when you have any pictures, that it's a representative of all our student populations and not just quote unquote go to the default of a white student.
So I think, you know, with regards to decolonizing your course, some of the things that is critical is that like I said before, the impact of 0 textbook costs for your students, especially if they're living below poverty. The cost of living is very high in California. So you have to just keep that in mind. It's important that we do more than just land acknowledgements. Every time I've done a land acknowledgement, I'm constantly promoting ethnic studies, AIS programs, our American Indian Studies program at our campus, local businesses that are run by our Indigenous community. How we can further support our Indigenous community is critical. So we have to do more than just land acknowledgements. We have to put it into action. And that's really what decolonization is about. Creating an equity-minded and clear rubric for our students. I allow my students to critique my rubric and to give me insight and what works for them. So I do have that open teaching, open pedagogy within my classroom. Providing recordings and written instructions for students on how they can access materials on Canvas, making sure that you're providing university design praxis, and make sure everything is ADA compliant. For MS accessibility checker or Google Docs accessibility checker, make sure that you are adhering to disability justice in your classroom with all your materials. Being intentional of multiracial and diverse representation of authors within your classroom. You know, if you're going to talk about STEM, it's important to mention Henrietta Lacks, Flossie Wong-Stahl, Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, and many other women of color in STEM that have been kind of like their identities over the years have been erased and not elevated as much as it should have been. And then also, if you have ideas with students to get an idea of who your students are, I do a Google intake form to kind of get an idea of their name, how they want to be called upon, their pronouns, their ethnicity, their identity, what brought them to take my course, so that way I'm actually creating my course curriculum and pedagogy surrounding it and elevating their lived experiences. I also give shout outs to my students on their contributed work in the class. I provide different modalities of, you know, students who are not able to come to my class but can watch the recordings, that they can still get points for attendance. Researching multiracial, multicultural, international perspectives of your discipline from different international countries, providing that global understanding. Provide an anti-racist and equity lens in all your course modules and content, not just one assignment. I know for the sake of action plans, we have, you know, a limited time to provide those action plans and to actually execute them, but just keep in mind that anti-racism and decolonization should be throughout your entire course and discipline. And OFAR shares really a lot of exemplar practices. Critically assess your student data regarding incompletion, and look at how you can change your curriculum, pedagogy, and practice before you run data again. Because if you don't, you're going to get the same results. So that's really important to understand when you're running data with your institutional research. What are you doing to really enhance the students' lived experiences in the classroom?
All right, and aspect of time, I'm just going to share a link that is going to give you to other resources, other books, research articles, so that you can continue your journey on decolonizing not just the syllabus that is a document, but your entire course, practices, and hopefully the rest of your college. And with this, let me just click the right link so I can share the link. Our presentation has concluded, so Kim, back to you.
Hey, I'd just like to thank you both so much. You have so much expertise and knowledge to share. And, we're bumped right up to the top of the hour here. So there was a little bit of question and answering going on in the chat. I'll make sure if there are any questions that we'll get those forwarded to you. And we will follow up. As Luis indicated, you are sharing these slides. And we'll either put them in the OFAR course or in the Google group or whatever Liz does usually to share stuff out. So we'll definitely share all this stuff. And thank you all for being here today. There are a couple other pieces of information I could share with you about who to reach out to, but since we're bumping up to the top of the hour, I'll just also include those slides with Luis and Hosna's slides, just as a reminder about who to email if you need help in OFAR, and just the reminder of the webinar dates and how to make up your webinar stuff. And I think for now we're going to have to stop this recording, and I can stay a minute, but I really, I think it was for the hour. So I'm just going to stop the recording and see what happens and say goodbye.